Welcome to the 10th live stream of building a space shooter game on DevVenture with MTK. So the last time we ended, we were busy trying to fix the import properties, or rather to standardize them, so that when I export something from AssetForge or import something from any format into Godot Engine, it should be the same. That everything faces the same way, that up is in the same direction, that the scale is the same, and so on. And then also we decided to make some stylistic changes for the player in both the defender ship and the pirate ship. One of the things that I decided to do was to adjust the fins, and also I removed the middle fin, right? Then I also took this aspect, which used to sit on top of the gun, and I moved them to the sides and made them additional fins, kind of like a hoop scoops. And then one of the things that I started to try and do was to change the scale of the gun, so it's not as huge, so that it's a smaller, more unassuming gun. So let me rename this. Okay, we'll call this gun, or main gun, or gun main, gun dash main. So we know it's a gun and it's the main gun. All right. Then we can set the position to be more central, something like this. Okay, that seems okay. And now we don't actually need as many lights. So the lights were just there initially for me to emphasize the color of the pirate ship. But now that's not necessary anymore. So we don't need as many lights. But we can keep them. So what is this? This is what is that? Wing thruster light in and on the right. Oh, I see. Okay, I've moved them. I didn't move them. I moved the whole ship down, but I left the lights. Okay, so let's do that. We'll move all the lights, all of the lights down. We'll keep exactly the same positions except their Y location. We'll bring them all down, all together, until they are where they're supposed to be. Something like this. Right? So we've got the intake light, we've got the output light, and we've got the thruster light. Much better. Okay, I'm happy with this. And now let's go back to the defender ship and figure out what to do with you. What are we going to do about you? Because that's quite a long, extended battle. So why don't we do this? We take the gun. Where's this thing? Yeah, this thing. Okay, so we can eliminate the battle. I mean, the bullet spawner left. If we need another bullet spawner, we can just add it again. This is just a marker 3D. Okay. So the mesh instance 3D can be called gun mesh, gun dash mesh. We'll call this gun dash main. So the main gun and the gun's mesh. So let's set the scale of this whole thing from 100 to 50% of the original size. And then we can pull this thing back, bring it down, focus, and examine. Nope. Z transform. Right. Let's see. Something like that. Confirm that that looks fine. Yes. And then just until it coincides and doesn't stick out, but also doesn't go too far in. Okay. So now the gun doesn't extend beyond the extremities of the ship itself, but it's also you know what? Let's bring it down a little bit more. Make it more obvious that it's a gun. Okay. So we can set the scale to something like 75% of the original size, because that's still within the overall extent. Okay, maybe not 75, maybe 70. 70%? 65%. Strange how I have to barter for the scale, but okay. Bring it down, bring it up, put it in place. Yes, that works. Now it looks better too. And now, of course, I'm sure you can imagine the problem that we have again is there is no landing gear on this thing. Well, we can make a narrative explanation for that, right? Because the mining vessel and the defender vessel are allies, and they are more wealthy, I suppose is the best word. They have more resources at their disposal, and so they can do stuff like electromagnetic levitation or some kind of science fiction anti-gravity docking mechanism. So when this thing docks, it floats. It doesn't lie on the floor. So it's not resting on the gun, and it doesn't need any landing gear. That's the lazy way out. The non-lazy way out is just to add landing gear and put in collision shapes on the landing gear so that the ship can actually rest on the floor when it lands. It's not necessarily lazy, it's just a stylistic choice, like I mentioned. Okay, and as you've noticed, the mining vessel doesn't have landing gear either, for the same, we can make it for the same reason, but again, it's just a thing that I forgot to add in the end. Okay, well, let's see. If I put the positive x, y, z orientation, it's like this. Positive x, y, z orientation is like that, and positive x, y, and z orientation is like that. So they're all facing the same way. So now if I go to test flight and I bring in a player ship, file system, not models, scenes, assets, scenes, entities, defender ship, put it in. Seems like it's oriented correctly. Okay. Now that we've Now that we've corrected the overall appearance, orientation, scale, and setup for each of our player scenes, right? So defender, miner, pirate. Now we can go into the script and fix all of the control problems. Okay? Because remember, now we've moved things around in the scene tree, or the scene tree. We moved things around in the scene tree, and the script player behavior was trying to reference these nodes, but we've shifted their name, we've shifted their position in the scene tree, we've shifted their position in the hierarchy, right? So we've adjusted who their parent nodes are and all kinds of things. So their node paths have changed completely. Okay. So let's go back to this, figure this out and see. Okay, so we've got the speedometer reading. So why don't we just do this? We copy the node path. Copy the node path. We go to speedometer and we just paste it there like this. And then the reading is just this slash reading. So like that. Then the left gun, do we even need a right gun? No, we don't. So we'll delete that. We'll call this main gun. Okay. And then there's an error down here because we are using main gun. And we fix that. Okay. We come back up to this point and we choose gun main. We copy the node path and paste it here. So let's do that. Ship root gun main. Then we've got the plasma bolt scene, the pause menu scene. I think there were functions like this one. So what is this? The control hinge label. So let's create a variable for that. Okay, so we say at onReady variable. So this thing controls hint label is of type. I mean, we don't specify the type, we just paste speedometer. So we copy this. But instead of this, we change it to controls hint label. And then down here, we just change this to be control hint label. Controls hint label dot visible is true. Okay, we just double check the same thing here. Controls hint label. So what I'm doing, if you've noticed, is I've redefined this node path that I was using as an actual variable that we establish at start, right at the start of the start of runtime for the scene. Which means that if we ever do change the position of controls hint label in the future, we only change it here and not in 5 or 6 other places in the script. It's more modular, it's more controlled and less buggy, so we don't have to worry about errors coming up later. So that one's fine, that one's fine. Shot cooldown start. See, ideally this should also have been a variable, but because the node path was so short, I decided to do just this, which is not good. I should change it. So let's do that. Okay, so we'll call this onReady variable fire rate no shot cooldown. Just keep it the same name. We'll set that to be shot cooldown. Okay, now we can export a variable here for fire rate, which is something I want. But you know what? Here's what I'm thinking. So this is Krita, by the way. It's a drawing app, but it's also useful for sketching notes and scribbles. So let me just set up my pen. Wrong monitor. Monitor 2. Yes, that's better. Okay, so what I want to do is change the color to like a bluish color. Okay, I want to have the following, right? So this is the player. If I say player, player consists of several components. Okay, so the first one is the ship. The second one is the gun. And the third one is the user interface and camera. Well, actually, we can separate those as well. Okay, camera. Now each of these can be separated into modules. Okay, so for example, if I change the color now to a green, like a not too bright green like that. Okay, so the player, the ship has the model, the animations, and the controls. Right? The same thing for the gun, but separately because it's a different module. Okay, so it's got the model, ODEL, and then the animations, we'll just say animations like that, and the controls. The UI has the UI elements and controls. So we'll say elements like this, and the controls. And then the camera has the controls. Okay. Now you might wonder, how can the camera's controls be separated from the ship's controls? In the current setup, they can't. But there are controls for the camera that might not necessarily be specific to the ship type. And in that case, you want it to be generalized and not specialized. Okay, so I suppose no. So every ship has its own model and animations and its own controls. Those are specialized for the player type, right? So the pirate ship has its own model, its own animations, and its own controls. And so does the defender ship, and so does the miner ship. But they are all inheriting from an abstract version of the ship, some parent ship. Maybe not abstract, but it's got a generalized ship. And we want to find out what that general parent ship class looks like. What does it do? And then make those variants inherit from and extend, like build on top of that general ship. So that's probably where we'll add in. So the camera controls won't function the same, right? So this is more like if you want to have zoom in, zoom out, or add camera effects, right? So like screen shake or chromatic aberration, or add like shader animations or post process effects, right? So what's it called? Screen space effects rather than world effects, and so on. That's where those controls come in, and that's more advanced. We don't care about that now because we aren't polishing the game. We're not working on game feel, we're not working on immersion or any of those things yet. We want to find out, do the basics work? Is this a foundation that we can build a game on? If not, we need to change things. And if we've added all of those other things to to our prototype and end up discarding a huge majority of that prototype, then all the work we've added to it is lost. Or maybe we decide that this whole game isn't worth pursuing anymore, and then all the extra work we did for it is lost, right? So avoid unnecessary details until you've validated your game design, and then we work on appearances and polish later. Okay, now that I've established all of these things, I hope that you understand more clearly what it is that I'm trying to do by redefining and revisiting the player script and all of these things all the time. Okay? Now, how do we translate this into the Godot engine? How do we make it such that I can separate the gun from the ship, for example, right? So ship behavior and gun behavior are separate scripts, and if the player is using a game mode that doesn't include a gun, like the mining vessel, for example, then the player behavior script should not manage launching and firing projectiles and dealing with all of those collisions and damage dealing and all of that stuff. That should be a part of a dedicated gun script that is attached to a gun object, which can be added to the player ship depending on whether that's necessary. Okay, so what are we getting complaints about? Left gun not declared in the current scope. Right, so if I go to test flight now, I go to test flight and give it a run. Let's see what happens. As expected, controls hint label invalid assignment of property or key visible with value of type bool on the base object of type null instance. Controls hint label. Okay, let's copy this node path and paste it there. It's the same, no changes. So if controls hint label, then set it visible to true. So what we're doing here is we're checking if the controls hint label variable is not null, then set its visible boolean to true. Let's see if that works. Still not. And speedometer 2. Okay, so let's try the same thing. If speedometer, then set the text to speed. And this is column 48. So let's just do this and this. Okay, give it a run. Same thing. Main gun is null. Reading is null. Speedometer is null. Why are they all none? Why are they null? What's going on here? Oh, I see. Because we've set it up like that. So maybe if we take away ship root, because the script is already attached. Yeah, because look, we said shot cooldown is just shot cooldown instead of ship root slash shot cooldown. And this one isn't null, as you can see, it's got an object ID. So we take away ship root from the node path, and this should fix things. Stop, start, and we're going. Excellent. So we'll switch over to test flight and run the game from here. Brilliant. Much better. Okay, so notice something. I've adjusted the fire rate of the gun, but see now how the bullets are much lower than the crosshair. So what we can do is we can shift the crosshair down in the player ship. So if we go to camera and switch on preview, or actually go towards 2D, we can adjust the crosshair's location. We go down towards transform and shift the Y position up in value, something like 480. Okay, and then we go back towards test flight and test it now. It's still too low. So if I go here and I shift it even further down, something like 540. Don't worry about the green things. We'll fix that once it's actually working. Okay, so let's try again. Yeah, that looks good. So what we want is the bullets to reach the center of the crosshair eventually, right? Because each projectile has a time to live, right? In quotes, it's got a time before it is deleted. And we want those projectiles to, to fly fast and forward. And we want the crosshair to be a representation of where the projectile will hit something eventually, right? Depending on the distance. So if I go towards the menu and I change the scene to firing range and I fly up here like this, well, that's way too fast. Okay, this isn't working. Why isn't this working? If I go to the player script and I go towards the shoot function, yeah, bolt scale, that's the problem. Set the scale to 1. Or just don't set the scale. Just don't set the scale. Don't set the scale. Okay, and now we can test this properly. Still not working. Bolt scale. Where else is it being used? Okay. This is really annoying. Okay, let's see. If I go to the plasma bolt, components, plasma bolt, and then I switch over to the 3D view and check the scale. How big is this thing? I go to the transform, scale is 1. For the bolt mesh, how big is this thing? Here we have a problem. Okay, set this to like 0.1 and 0.1 and 0.05. Okay, and then save that and shift the collision shape to match it. Okay, so let's do that. Drag this and this. Okay, and then if we look from the top and we drag the extent outwards and then further out and back in, just so we can see something like that. Yeah, okay. So we save this, and then we go to test flight, save this, and give it a test. Much better. So you can see now the crosshair was way too low. And now we can adjust the position a little bit better. Okay, so the position was 540. Let's change it back to 420 and test that. Okay, it's just a little bit too much. No, actually not. If I move backwards, okay, let me go towards the firing range and check this. It's too high. So I'm gonna do a little trick. Okay. No, I'm not. Never mind. Go back to the defender ship and shift this position to 380. Okay. And go to firing range and run the game. Why is this not working anymore? Okay, so I'm gonna have to do that trick. Okay, so what I'll do is I'll set the position. What is the maximum? Looks like 1280 by 720. Okay, so 1280 over 2 is 480. No, it isn't. 1280 over 2 is 640. And 720 over 2 is 350, 360. Confirm. $640, 720 over 2, 360. Okay. Let's save. Then we go into the 3D scene, undo preview mode, and then move this. So what we'll do is we'll change main gun to coincide with the camera's position. Okay, so we'll go to the camera's position, check the transform location 0, 0.064 and 0. So let's do this, gun main, and 0. Okay, and then shift the gun mesh down to be only an aesthetic thing. Okay, let's save that, go back to firing range and run the scene. Let's see what happens. I see. So the positioning is off. Okay. We can go back to the defender ship in the 2D view. So moving it towards the exact center was wrong. So what we can do is we can say 600 and 320, something like this. We'll do some shifting and see how it looks. If I go to firing range and test that, no. So we are basically jumping to either side of the original locations. I mean, yeah, of the spawn point. So it was 640, so make it 620. And it was 360. 360 minus 320 is 40. So add on another one, so 340. Okay, back to firing range and test. Yes, there we go. And then we spiral around. Nice, working. So if you're wondering, before the fire rate was a lot slower, and that was deliberate. I was trying to test if the collisions were working correctly, and they were for a while, but I was doing some hacky workarounds to make that happen. Okay, now let's try this. Let's see if the mining objects get damaged by projectiles. They shouldn't, and they don't. Perfect. Okay. Now I can go back to the script and check the shot cooldown timeout. So here I can go to export, add a new export variable, fire rate. Okay, and this is of type float, and we can set that to a value, any value. If I go to the player ship, what is the shot cooldown value right now? 0.1. So the default is 0.1. Okay, so now if I go back to like firing range and I choose the player ship, and I'm so make this the root, delete this. So let's call this player ship. Now I can go back to firing range, click on the player ship, and adjust things. Okay, so the firing rate, let's just see something. If I say 1 divided by 0.1 is 10, and if I say 10 divided by 0.1, it's 100. Okay, back to the drawing board. We want the fire rate, so we say here at the bottom, fire rate is, so this is just is, it's congruency, not equality. So fire rate is the number of projectiles, so num projectiles over unit time. Okay, and the shot cooldown is measured in seconds. So currently it's on 0.1 seconds. So every 0.1 seconds, it fires a signal that the cooldown is done. And then the shoot function creates a new projectile and sends it off. That means it's shooting 10 projectiles a second. So we want the fire rate to be equal to 10 to have a 0.1 second shot cooldown. Okay, and so number of projectiles over time equals fire rate. Therefore, if we want to measure the number of projectiles, then we have to multiply it by 0.1. So what we can do is we can make fire rate a representation of the number of projectiles. Okay, and then all we have to do is divide the fire rate by time. So if we say fire rate is 10, for example, fire rate is 10, that means 10 projectiles per second. Then how do we set the shot cooldown? to represent this? It's because we're saying the number of projectiles is fire rate over time. No, fire rate multiplied by time. Okay, I need more values to play with so I can get a grasp of this with my intuition. Let's see. Let's do yellow, different color for a different train of thought. Alright, so let's see. If 10 projectiles a second gives us a shot cooldown of 0.1, that means 1 projectile per second should give us a shot cooldown of 1. And half a projectile per second, in other words 1 projectile every 2 seconds, should give us a shot cooldown of 2 seconds. 100, for example, will give us 0.01 shot cooldown. So it looks like 1 over the number of projectiles, right? 1 over 1 is 1, 1 over 10 is 0.1, 1 over 100 is 0.001. So there we go. 1 divided by fire rate equals shot cooldown. So if I go to Godot in the script, in the ready function, I can set the, what's this thing called? Shot cooldown. So I can say shot cooldown dot wait time. What is this thing called? Wait time. Shot cooldown dot wait time is equal to, always assigned, fire rate, or 1 divided by fire rate. What is this thing called? Fire rate. Okay, then if I go to the player ship and I go, for example, in the fire, I change the fire rate here to 1 shot per second. Let's see what that does. One. And it seems to be working, although now I'm facing the wrong direction. Why is that? What? Defender ship? Why are you facing the wrong way? Oh, of course. Because I had it. Yeah, okay. Go to the transform. And pilot ship. On the transform, it's rotated 180. Okay, So let's change the fire rate from 1 or 10. Let's change it to something like, I want 2 projectiles a second. Let's see if that works. Yeah, seems to be working. And if I do like 100 projectiles per second, this is going to be interesting, but it's also going to probably cause problems. Let's see. Yeah. No, not actually. Look, it just looked like it was causing problems, but it doesn't. Like I could basically paint away. I can paint away these things. No, it caused problems. So notice how there's this issue, right? Like collisions aren't working from certain angles, and I don't know why. Like if I move backwards, now suddenly it works again, right? No, still not. Okay. It's bizarre. Anyway, let's change the fire rate back to something more realistic, interesting. So, okay. You know what? I'm gonna make um actually no. We've basically run out of time at this point, and we've actually accomplished something, even if it doesn't seem like it. Because, like here, if you see, if I go up to the top, this fire rate variable was not in place before, and it was always like a more involved process to change the fire rate of the ship. So I would have had to go to shot cooldown and reset the shot cooldown there, for example. And then what that would do is make things more disruptive. So, like if I was in the firing range, I could have adjusted the fire rate earlier to something, like this, and then test, and then change it and test it, and change it and test it as many times as I needed to until I get the fire rate as I want it to be. Whereas before I would have had to go here, change it here, then go back here, test it here, then come back here and change it here, and then go back here and test it here. It's too fiddly. And then also the other things we've done, we've shifted the bullet spawner from down here to up there, so that now we have a crosshair and a bullet that reflects it, right? So where we aim the crosshair, that's where the bullet goes, the projectile, the plasma bolt, whatever you want to call it. And then we've also adjusted the Oh, you know why the things are facing the wrong way. But I'm not going to fix that now. Let's just leave it. I think it's because if I go here and I say file open, and I say Control A, and then move it up. Oh, okay. Don't save anything. Yeah, so I think it's because in Godot engine, forward is actually negative Z. And I don't understand why they did it that way. But it's that way. Okay. So if I were to export from Asset Forge, I would need to rotate the object 180 degrees on the y-axis, then export it. So when I import it into Godot, it's already facing this way, so I don't have to do this rotation in the, in the setup scene. But it's just a minor thing. It's okay. We can leave it. As long as the controls work the same for all versions of the player. So mining vessel, pirate, and the defender are controlled with exactly the same controls. So left on the mouse turns it left, right on the mouse, right mouse movement turns it right, and so on. Predictably, consistently, and stably. Okay? But yeah, we have gone over an hour now, so I'm gonna say thank you to you for watching. I'm gonna make a shout out to Cubes for your support. Thank you very much. And then for all of you who have watched, thank you for your time and your attention. And thank you for following me on this DevVenture. And I'll see you in the next